Welcome to Conversations with Cox and Kielseth, and to be more specific, that is filmmaker Alex Cox and myself, film curator Pablo Kielseth. Alex will join us by phone from his home in Oregon, while I sneak away from my office to call him from one of the projection booths used by the International Film Series, which has been screening foreign and independent movies at CU Boulder since 1941. We will keep our chats to about 20 minutes as we discuss whatever movie-related topics grab our fancy. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, action.
We are recording.
Well, great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here we go.
I should mention that I'll be at Sundance next week, so we'll.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, but probably have to take a break for that week and.
Oh, that's very handy because I've got to go to England to see my mother next week. I'm going to leave, in fact, on Tuesday and won't be back for a week anyway. So
Okay.
It's perfect.
Good.
That's
Good.
perfect. Yeah.
And what were the topics that you wanted to cover today? I'm going to let you, I think, lead the boat around.
Well, I was thinking about what you said last week when you took these 2 years of American films, 7 years apart, and one of them I think was 74, 75, and one was 7 years later in the early 80s.
Yeah, it was 74 and 81.
74 and 81. And so I just thought, wow, there were some good films in 70. The list, when you reeled off the list of films from 74, there were some like classics in there. But it seemed very thin on the ground in the 80s, the kind of real, I mean, admittedly they were, because you were of an impressionable age, the films had certain qualities to them. But anyway, so what I did was I thought, why did it fall down? And was it a progression? Because it felt to me like there was a progression of a lack of really great films being made. Obviously every year a couple of great films get made, somewhere, but fewer and fewer during that 7-year period. And so I went online and found lists of films of that time frame that included, it's mostly studio Hollywood films, but I mean, there's everything from like, high-end porno all the way to Roger Corman and Death Race 2000. And so in 1975, I can see a bunch of films that I think we could still think of as classics,
Right.
Like Barry Lyndon, Day of the Locust, Death Race 2000,
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Afternoon,
Yeah.
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Nashville, Rocky Horror Picture Show, Shampoo, Rollerball. I like Rollerball, and even I would even throw in a film that you may not even have seen, a Western called Posse, directed by Kirk Douglas and starring Kirk Douglas.
And you're saying that's a great movie? Because I have not seen that one. Yeah.
I think it's a great movie. Because it's a political Western. It's sort of like the Frank Perry film Doc, it's about kind of contemporary politics with a Western facade.
Right.
And so when Kirk Douglas made it in 74, released in 75, he was making a film, in his opinion, about Nixon. And he was playing Nixon, as this media manipulating law and order sheriff, And so it's, which is the same kind of politics except that Doc was about LBJ, supposedly.
Yeah.
So anyway, I thought that was interesting, and it's really if you haven't seen Posse, it's really worth seeing. Anyway, I came up then with 10 movies that I would think of classic films, and I didn't even include Jaws because I wasn't a big fan of Jaws. And the following year there were almost as many. 76, I got like Assault on Precinct 13 and Bound for Glory, Car Wash, and Killing of a Chinese Bookie. Several Westerns that weren't bad, like the Missouri Breaks and Outlaw Josie Wales and The Shootist.
Yeah.
Silent Movie. Taxi Driver.
Yes, of course.
Tracks. Yeah, did you ever see Tracks?
I have not seen Tracks.
Henry Jaglam's Vietnam War film starring Henry Fonda. It's a very good film. Uh-huh. And finally, also in my top 9 or 8 or 9 films of 76, Drum.
Drum.
Now, you must have seen Drum.
War and Oates, I think, is that right?
Yes, War and Oates is in it, and it's the sequel to another plantation movie called Mandingo.
Oh, yeah.
And in the first one, Ken Norton plays Mandingo, and in the second one, as I recall, he plays his own son, Drum. And it's just really, I mean, obviously he's not a professional actor, but he has a lot of presence, and the film is like hugely funny, even if it's not necessarily meant to be hugely funny.
Right.
But I think it's definitely up there, among the great films. So anyway, I got like 8 or 9 great films out of 76, and then came 77, and boy, the numbers just kind of tanked. I mean, I know, if you love Steven Spielberg, and you go, oh, Close Encounters came out there, you know. But I could, you know, Annie Hall, Sorcerer, and Rabid.
Oh, yeah.
The only 3 that would stand out for me. And I suppose Rabid was a Canadian film.
So you're not going to go to bat for Eraserhead?
Not very much. I'll go to bat in a couple of years' time for another David Lynch film, but not so much Eraserhead.
Yeah.
And obviously there are other films that year that made a lot of, you know, Star Wars came out and made a lot of money. Saturday Night Fever was a phenomenon. Yeah. Looking for Mr. Goodbar was a sort of phenomenon, but none of them, I think, are really classic films.
You know, there was a write-up on Star Wars a couple of weeks ago in the New York Times by Tim Kreider. Now, I know that the combination of it's probably not an essay you would seek out necessarily, but I thought it was actually quite good. And he talked about, he just had a couple lines in there that were really, he said, it felt uncomfortably weird watching American audiences cheer fantasies of indigenous peoples defeating capitalist invaders bent on exploiting their resources, even as our own battle droids were blowing up insurgents in oil-rich Iraq. I think he makes some interesting points in there. And I think what you and I certainly share with the Star Wars thing is, well, I'm just tired of the franchise and in general, and it is sort of a weird imperial fever dream that has gripped the nation.
It's an imperial, that's a very interesting way to describe it. It's an imperial fever dream. There was an article in the paper, or the online paper version of the paper last week, I think it was a Latin American paper, but in Chile, where there was, you know, resurgence of fascism, or perhaps it never went away, they use, like Star Wars, they use a Jedi character, but they put Pinochet's face over the Jedi face, mm-hmm. and it says in whatever the Spanish equivalent was, "May the Force be with you." And I just cringed when I heard them going, "May the Force be with you" and stuff, because it just seemed like, at the very least bad, it seemed like kind of the Holy Ghost and enforced Christianity and all that nonsense that one had imposed upon one in an English environment.
I think the one thing that, you know, the original Star Wars was good about and that tapped into was that some people were reading it as sort of like having a little bit of a subtext for Vietnam, because that was very much still in the air. But I'm going to bring you back to 1976 because you kind of went through. You're saying that you. And you went through Sorcerer and all that, but speaking of Vietnam in 1976...
Or 77, 76.
Oh, sorry,
yeah.
77.
77, yeah.
What about Rolling Thunder?
That's the one with helicopters, right? And they go, and there's all... And Warren Oates is in it too, I think, but, you know,
this is Tommy Lee Jones.
Oh, Tommy Lee Jones. No, you see, I don't think I saw Rolling Thunder.
I think that would be one to add to the list, but anyway, I'm just trying to give 76 a little bit more due.
76 or 77?
Or sorry, 77. I keep confusing myself. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think obviously there's. Well, I feel that you and I could always make any top 10 list of any year and come up with 10 great films for any year, but I'm not going to diminish your point that in 77 there weren't as many top tier, top shelf movies.
Same the following year. I mean, it all depends what what floats your boat too. Because I mean, if you're a real fan of The Deer Hunter, then you're going to go, no, 1978 was the year of The Deer Hunter, or Days of Heaven. But I found those films tedious and boring, and the politics of Deer Hunter really bad, and so they didn't really.
77 though. What about Wizards? Ralph Bakshi.
And I haven't seen Wizards. The only Ralph Bakshi film I saw was Fritz the Cat, which I thought was absolutely wonderful. But that was made a few years earlier, wasn't it? That's probably 73 or something.
Well, I'm actually very fond of Wizards, and I remember seeing it in junior high, and it was a bit risque for us back then, and especially I don't know. I think that one would be worth revisiting. I'll tell you,
I haven't seen it.
Yeah. To me, I think I just really enjoy films that don't have CGI as a rule of thumb. And so in the way that you were saying that there seems to be a big shift between 74 and 81, to me, I feel that there's been even more plate tectonics have shifted with the franchise universe of all the Disney and comics and CGI. And because now if you look at the top 10 films of that get, that are the biggest grossing films for the year, they're mostly sequels. Whereas back then, even in 77, if you look at the top 10 grossing films for that year, that was not yet the case. There were still at least, a lot of original films.
Yeah, and there wasn't an enormous amount of sequels. I mean, I think there was around about this period, there was like an Exorcist sequel, and there was a sequel to French Connection, and neither was very good, and they just came and went. There weren't like franchises like there are now.
Yeah, yeah.
Star Wars was the beginning of a franchise.
Yeah. Oof. And now it's taken over. It's everywhere.
78. Okay, now 1978. I'm going through. There's a bunch of films that were kind of interesting, like American Heart, Wax, Boys and Company C, Coming Home. But even so, I would only say great films that came out of 78. Big Wednesday, American films. This is obviously not the world cinema. Big Wednesday, Blue Collar, Dawn of the Dead.
Yes.
And maybe, I don't know, maybe The Driver or The Eyes of Laura Mars or one of those, because those, I remember them as being essentially very showy and entertaining kind of things, What do you think? Do you remember either of those? I'm sure you remember Dawn of the Dead, but do you remember The Driver? With Ryan O'Neal?
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, for me, though, I'm with you on Dawn of the Dead. That is one of... I think for me, that movie was radical insofar as the idea it placed in my head of humans as the ultimate consumers, and it's blatant in its message. And one thing I pulled up a random list that was on the IMDb of like the one person's ideas of the best films going from 1970 to 2010. Now, they do give Star Wars the nod for their favorite film, which is not a surprise, for 77. But they also give Dawn of the Dead their prize for best film of 1978, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I can see if it weren't for Blue Collar. I think Blue Collar is a great film and very little, rarely seen.
Did you go as far as going into 79, or did you stop at 78?
79? I've got my 7 years. I got 79. Obviously, I'm not a big Alien fan, but some people would say.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Sorry.
Yeah. And some people would say Manhattan was great and stuff. And some people are big fans of Rock and Roll High School, But I would say from 79, the only things that really moved me are All That Jazz.
Oh, that's great.
And Apocalypse Now. I mean, Apocalypse Now, you have to put it on the list of classic, amazing films, And All That Jazz is brilliant.
Now, how do you feel about the different releases for Apocalypse Now?
I think that the second, or rather the longer one that I've seen, it has one really, really good scene where Marlon Brando puts Martin Sheen in a shipping container and then reads to him from Newsweek and Time Magazine and the New York Times, explaining to him how they're winning the war. And it is, it's so good. I mean, really, that's all you need. All the rest of the film is amazing too, but that's all you need really is just that scene of Martin Sheen trapped in a shipping container being read to by Colonel Kurtz, you know. From the newspapers of the day, fake news, you know. It's an incredible scene with two really great actors, you know.
It is, yeah, true. And you got to, I don't think, you never crossed paths with Martin Sheen, did you? I know you crossed paths with Dennis Hopper.
No, I met Martin Sheen because he came to introduce a screening of Walker in Tucson, Arizona.
Really?
The year that it was made, he came to introduce it and kind of organize and was the kind of the host of a sort of I don't know what his connection to Tucson was, or maybe it was just the organization that was being benefited. He was a supporter of the organization. So anyway, he came out and was the kind of the host of the event to raise money for a cause benefiting immigrants in southern Arizona. So that was very nice. So I met him then. And I guess I must have met him once or twice with his son, although they didn't, you know, I don't think they hung out together or anything. Hey, and then 1980, you know, there's another Star Wars film, and Airplane, of course, a very popular film. And Heaven's Gate, some people love Heaven's Gate, and I haven't seen Melvin and Howard. Is that a good film?
I don't know. Missed that one myself.
Yeah, I never saw it. It sounds interesting, though, because it's some guy who falls in with a person who turns out to be the fugitive millionaire Howard Hughes. And so it might be interesting. And The Shining, obviously, a lot of people like The Shining, and that's
I'm raising my hand. You know, I'm one of them. I know.
But I mean, you know, and then Elephant Man.
Yes.
Raging Bull. I'd put a big gold star by Elephant Man and by Raging Bull, I guess. I'd have to.
You're not going to go to bat for Caddyshack?
Not so much, although I'm a huge Chevy Chase fan, as you know. I mean, Chevy and I just go back a long way. Hey, no, but there is one film that I haven't seen that I wonder if you have seen, a film from 1980, The Legend of Alfred Packer.
Well, of course, my old chums here at the University of Colorado, and starring your former colleagues, Don Yanacito, and our recently deceased friend, Phil Solomon, and many other fine friends and fellows in that one.
Well, whatever we think of the Raging Bull or Elephant Man or The Shining, surely The Legend of Alfred Packer is the one true classic, which stands out.
Oh no, but you're talking in 1980 though. So
1980.
Yeah. Sorry,
it's not the same film.
No. We actually do have a print for that one, and it's it's not anywhere near as funny. Oh, well, then we're not going to go buffs with that analysis. So I only have two classics from that year, 1980. And then in 1981, we got like Decline of Western Civilization, you got Cutter's Way, you got The Evil Dead, you got Mommy Dearest, My Dinner with Pennies from Heaven, Princess. I think Reds is brilliant. And I think that Neighbours also was pretty brilliant, as I recall. We talked about it, didn't we? The John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd. Yeah. No, I've got a fond spot for Neighbours too. And you know, the director of Cutter's Way just passed away recently. Yeah. Yes. But we both agree on that for sure. Yeah.
And every so often in this time frame, there appears a Ray Harryhausen film, and this was the year of Clash of the Titans, which I think is the only year in which Laurence Olivier appeared in a stop-motion animation movie. So the decline is evident, and naturally the film that exemplifies this decline, I now realize, is another film from 1981, which should be very high on the list of great American films, The Decline of Western Civilization.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And now, did you and Penelope went to the same school, right? But you said you didn't overlap, or
I think she was ahead of me. I think she had graduated when I got there. There were various illustrious alumni, including Jim Morrison, Charles Burnett, Francis Coppola, and Penelope. But they had all graduated by the time that I was a student there. So I learned about them. We heard about them. I was contemporary with some of the people like Jamal Fanaka, who directed Penitentiary, and Michael Miner, who wrote the original RoboCop, Tom Richmond, who was an excellent cinematographer, and a bunch of other good.
I think you and Penelope Spheres would have been a dream team for some crazy project. So maybe, who knows? Maybe you guys can still share a beer somewhere and talk about how you can work on a project. That would be amazing.
Well, we'll see. Let's see what we can do. Let's see if either of us. I don't know what. I think she was. Her daughters are really involved in animal rescue and animal fostering, and I think had a very large number of dogs and probably some other animals too. So I think that Penelope got very involved looking after the animals.
I can see you doing the same thing. That's your wheelhouse.
Kind of a dog rescue mission here, and so I understand. But I think she could be lured back. You're right. There's one of the dogs whining because she wants to go for a walk.
All right. Well, you give the dogs a scruff for me, and tell Todd I said hello, and I'll catch up with you as soon as the dust settles for both of us.
Absolutely. Have a great time at the festival. I hope you see some good films.
Great. I'll probably talk about that when next we get together. I'll give you the update.
I look forward to it.
All right, sir. Take care. Yep.
You
Ciao.
too. Thank you, Jason. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And cut. Okay, that's a wrap.
Thanks again for joining Alex Cox and myself today. I'd like to thank Jason Phelps for handling the audio and Ted Thacker for letting us use the intro to his song, The Ballad of Slim Cessna, for the musical cues that bookend these conversations. Don't forget to go out there and watch movies in a larger-than-home venue. It's what brings us all together to see movies the way they were meant to be seen, on the big screen, as we sit next to strangers, neighbors, and friends.